Mastering customer support soft skills can transform your entrepreneurial journey. Learn how strategic communications and due diligence can help you retain clients and expand your customer base. Join Richard Blank to unveil the nuanced skills of diplomacy and strategic vocabulary that you can set the tone of your sales calls and push business ahead. Tune in to unearth effective tactics to thrive in today's market.
Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show, where you will discover how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream. Paul Guyon, the mastermind behind the Lead Machine, introduces you to trailblazers who inspire you to implement life-changing solutions and systems you can model to nurture your leads and get your offers seen by your ideal clients who will invest in themselves and you. Be sure you visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, tune in and get ready to transform your vision into reality.
Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show. I'm Paul Guyon, your host, Lead Machine coach, and the founder of the Lead Machine Mastermind and Marketing Agency. I'm dedicating to helping you tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream. So whether you're just getting started or taking your business to the next level, let's get this conversation started and turn your dreams into reality. Richard's journey on his vision quest has been filled with many unexpected turns. At age 27, he moved to Costa Rica to train employees for one of the largest call centers in San Jose. He used his motivational public speaking skills and tactical rhetoric to train over 10,000 bilingual telemarketers. Wow, that's amazing. And gamification was an essential part of CCC's culture. And Richard has an extensive collection of restored American pinball machines, which I can see in the background here, and antique Rockola jukeboxes from Central America. He has a bachelor's degree in communications and Spanish from the University of Arizona and a language proficiency certificate from the University of Sevilla, Spain. A keynote speaker at Philadelphia's Abington High School 68th National Honor Society induction ceremony, and he was inducted into the 2023 Hall of Fame for Business. He believes in giving back to Abington Senior High School and endows a scholarship each year for students majoring in a world language at the university level. So Richard, brother, welcome. You're looking sharp today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for a hero's welcome.
You bet.
That bio, and I
Yeah.
appreciate it. But yeah, there were some twists and turns that got me here today. But
Yeah.
at the end, I have a really good story to share with you and your amazing audience.
Yeah, and I see the jukebox and what's that behind you? It looks like a
That's my private candy stash.
I was going to say that looks like a candy machine.
Of course it is. Listen, I always realized that you could be a child when you're growing up. So I collect jukeboxes, pinball machines, and of course I have my candy. But
Yeah.
I tell you what, when you know your taste and you're able to share it with others and it's a first time experience, it's really magical to be able to give that sort of experience.
I would agree. Awesome. So, can you share how your experience in Costa Rica training thousands of telemarketers has influenced your approach to customer support? I know we talked earlier a few weeks ago about that whole journey. So maybe you could enlighten us.
Of course. And once again, I can't thank you for showing some interest in it.
Yeah.
It's very humbling for the fact that the market speaks. 10,000 people, but that was over the course of decades.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, my style sells. It's appropriate. I try never to compromise ethics, values, and morals. I'm in a very strict Catholic country, but English is my first language. It's like an underhand pitch with a wiffle ball. Allow me to use a Nerf football with these guys here and to work with them so they can become more self-reliant, Paul, more self-confident. So I'll allow the big boys like Amazon, Concentrix, Teleperformance to bring them in, cattle call them, and carpet bomb them. Get as many as you can. I'm 150, which means I can be exceptionally selective of those that enter my environment. So it's really those that are pen at the ready, coachable, willing to laugh and cry and just make it happen. And if we're willing to grow together, it's very easy to find the right people to give these soft skills. So the training, that's the best part. It's almost like actors or musicians. They love the time that they're on film or on stage. The rest of the time is travel and waiting.
Yeah.
I hate the admin side, but it needs to be done. My passion is to walk the roads and do these training classes. Now, it's really more for balance, depending on the campaign. If it's sales, appointment setting, lead gen, customer support, or back office retention support, those are the sort of tones you need to adjust. Vocabulary, certain sort of questions in order to get checkpoints and move things forward. You know, it's interesting. You'll watch a movie like The Wolf of Wall Street, and you'll see Leonardo DiCaprio closing that deal in less than 2 minutes. I think it's like 1 minute, 47 seconds.
Yeah.
Someone like myself will actually get angry at the people behind him not making phone calls, but that's for a different time, different place. But I'll break that call down. He did a name drop 6 times. You look at the times when he pauses or uses illustrators for emphasis. And he keeps a very nice loud whisper. So in essence, what I'm capable of doing in these calls is looking at it in a sort of neutral way. Of course, I have emotion behind it depending on what they're slinging or their ethics behind the calls they're making. But if somebody is investing in the art of speech and they really want to make a balanced phone call, oh, I'm a colleague. I'd be more than happy to dissect and look into it. And so when I give these advanced soft skills, people use this outside of the office to recharge batteries and fix their families and marriages. I'll give you the best example, simple example. We'll use a thesaurus for similes. And when someone says, how may I help you? I'm supposed to give you points for that because you said may instead of can.
Yeah.
I don't like the word help. It provokes a defense. We're talking about conflict management here. So I will substitute the word help for assist, guide, or lend a hand, depending on the stage.
Oh, yeah.
And my brother, I've seen these readjustments of tones have prolonged conversations for better metrics. So we have better conversion ratios and talk times. Why? Because I'm not opening up rabbit holes. Just on the word help alone or saying I'm sorry compared to for my clarification. And then you ask the question or a military alphabet. So your emails, Paul, don't bounce back. And you can anchor for those that have served in the military. So am I doing any sort of clever tricks? No, I'm in the now and I'm very attentive and I'm learning about checkpoints. And if some individual assists me along the way and gives me a pass to pitch and gets through to you, I'll give a positive escalation to your assistant. I'll do it verbally and I'll do it in writing. So I can separate myself from others prospecting your business. And if I happen to call your company back, they'll thank me for mentioning their name to you. And these are the sort of things that just really reduce any sort of friction and allows things to happen naturally. And why do you think I'm able to build a business? Because people aren't, selling their souls for $1. They're just making nice phone calls to people and just playing their chances. And as I say, having romantic deaths on the phone. And it's a lost art. But if people are deciding to still invest in their speech, I think it's an excellent means to an end, and they'll make a fortune still making these phone calls.
Yeah. And so while you mentioned business, obviously, Richard runs a call center of telemarketers in Costa Rica. And he works for a number of different brands, I assume. And also, is it for yourself as well?
It's a good question. I'm mostly working, I'm an outsourced.
Okay, yeah.
So I'll work with companies in Canada and the United States, some local and a little bit in Europe. I reject more accounts than I accept. It's not like I don't want to grow, but I have to be realistic in regards to the client's expectations and the profile and skill sets of the candidates that I'm hiring. Plus, I'd like to reduce attrition and allow myself to sleep at night. And so it's very easy for me when I speak with individuals to see what sort of campaign they're doing. And between me and you and your audience, from time to time, I'll have somebody that's doing something that's gray area, could even be illegal.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be their fall guy. Come on, Paul and I aren't suckers.
Yeah.
I'll thank them and I think your script is interesting and wish you well. As I say before, you can use this rhetoric and these mediums for good and to build business, but a lot of people give it a bad rap. And so hopefully I can make shatter some misconceptions in regards to call centers and how people earn a living making and receiving phone calls.
Well, I like how you said you say no. You learn how to say no to your non-ideal clients. And I was just talking with another gentleman earlier today, and we were talking about how it's easy to get into something, but it's hard to get out of it. I learned that from Brian Tracy. So
Okay.
you need to have some guiding principles for the way you're going to operate as a business owner. And I think that's very intelligent and admirable to bring people up in that sort of environment because they, like you said, you were talking about selling their souls. That's ultimately what happens is when you go down that dark path. And so I applaud you for that. That's kind of, it's unusual to hear that sometimes.
My
So
brother, you know that golden jewels lose its luster. How many
yeah,
dinners can you and I really eat?
yeah,
And I can't buy more jukeboxes, don't have the room. So you're at a certain stage in life where what you want to do is pay it forward
yeah,
and maybe assist those in making better decisions. But to me, it was quite easy because it's just how I was raised by my parents and grandparents. And I started my business cash only. I never overextended with mortgages or loans or partners that put pressure on me. It was like the tortoise to the hare. You're talking about a gentleman that started a business 16 years ago. As much as I wish this happened 6 months ago, it was slow and steady, equivalent to Chuck Wepner versus Muhammad Ali when he went 15 rounds. Sometimes it's not about the belt or the win. You sometimes respect the individual that can actually go the distance regardless of how they look at the end of it.
Well,
That's really the judge of character.
my cat is entered into the
What's up, kitty? Is that a tail?
that's his tail. There he is.
No,
I was hoping he wouldn't. He's a fat one. I
he
was
must
hoping
like my voice. Look at that
I
pretty
think so.
cat, though.
I think so. That's Phoenix. I was hoping he wouldn't get into the picture, but here he is.
Oh, man,
Um,
Phoenix rising from the ashes.
yeah, for sure. A lot of times when I hear that a conversation should be scripted, one of my mentors, Ben Gay III, who's an amazing author of the Closers series of books, one of the original salespeople. He worked with, actually, Zig Ziglar worked for him,
Mhm.
and back in the early days, and everyone has a script, even though it might not be written, but there's a script that everyone uses, and there's stories that they repeat over time. So, what are your key strategies for sales scripts and to effectively and encourage genuine connection as well as results?
The best example I can give in regards to sharing rhetoric would be the Beatles' Help from My Friends that Joe Cocker borrowed during Woodstock. Even John Lennon said his version was amazing.
It was.
So it most certainly was. It gives me chills. I believe that it's really about anchoring and sincerity. Why don't we use you and I for an example, Paul? A lot of people contact you in regards to your podcast.
Mhm.
You have a ton of people you can choose from. It's not easy getting on the show. I made the first cut, and then when you and I spoke, made the second cut. And these are things that are done off camera that the individuals do not see that you do prior to these episodes. And so it's not as easy as people think. Nothing is given to you. I didn't beg to be on the show. I'm not slipping you a 20. It's the kind of thing where you and I met. We're gentlemen. We found each other very interesting and we're friends.
Yeah.
And I think that's a wonderful thing if you can share that sort of electromagnetic energy. And was money exchanged today? No, because the value of our friendship's worth more than $100. But when you get on these phone calls, people are black and blue. I mean, think about the stories of when people get married. Usually the wife says, these guys were hitting on me all day long, but Paul was a charmer. He was different. He was polite. He asked me to dance. He was never a gentleman or was fresh with me. You always hear about someone different, but then again, he's still a bachelor man and was courting you. What differentiated himself from you? Well, maybe it's almost like when you get into those traffic accidents, they say the people that were asleep or drunk, they can kind of like jello and wiggle into it. You're not tense. You wu-weight it. You allowed life to take you as is in your currents and in your winds. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I mean, of course, you need a rudder for the ship. I mean, nothing is just put out in front of you. You just mentioned scripts. Bro, you need a little bit of structure. Like if we're playing hockey, you got to have a puck and sticks in the net.
Right.
You depend if it's a slap shot, a backhand, or some really cool move, or my favorite Bernie Perron stoning people to win the Stanley Cup. My point being is you are given a medium. You decide how you want to use it. And for me, this beautiful medium of rhetoric through phonetics, through the sound of the speech, having an endless selection of topics to talk about. Why don't you do 5 minutes of due diligence like you and I did? When you make these prospecting phone calls, or you're meeting someone for cocktails, or there's some sort of business convention, why don't you do the due diligence so you can already start on second and third base with people? Or maybe instead of just talking about business, you can talk about where they went to the university or other sort of interests that they may have. Oh man, if someone brings up pinball machines to me, I have a credit card at the ready and it's yours to lose. You will literally get my 5 minutes of undivided attention. It's yours to juggle. And for me, what I try to do is to do it through sincerity and authenticity. So it's stable. Let me give you an example. If I were making a prospecting phone call, I'd be like, the Lead Machine Growth Show. How are you today? I would start the call with a company name spike. I would utilize my anonymity just for the first thing, because for the whole call, that's shady. But I'm allowing myself to present to you in a neutral, but something that you understand. And I said it better than you did. So I would gauge then, like a boxer, a reaction from somebody. Because if I immediately try to speak to Paul or think it's a sales call, sometimes people say, we're not interested. Thank you. Is this a sales call? Boom. Not when I do a company name spike. Usually that's then when they'll say, who's this?
Yeah.
Of course. Now we're at a 10, now we're at a 6. And you move the defense to my offense, so moving forward. So then I'll say, that's an excellent question. My name is Richard Blank. So then I'll say, well, who is Richard Blank? Even a little bit closer. You know, I'm so happy that you brought that up. The company I'm with is Costa Rica's call center. So now what am I doing? I'm playing the true odds. I got 60% potential, 40% resistance, if not more. If they potentially give me their name when they answer the phone, then I can move it forward a little bit more. Yes, Kathy, my name is Richard Blank. Nice to... And so then what happens? They think that I'm at least polite enough, knew the parameters, didn't try to angle in there. All I did was say the name of your company, knocked you out of the trance. And I get to jump clouds. I get to do that 200 times a day. It's fun. Say name of a company 200 times. And then you get to gauge your intros, because a body and a conclusion doesn't exist. You don't land an intro, you have nothing else in your story. So why would you even think about 4 paragraphs ahead? Doesn't matter. I focus on 30-second checkpoints. So your Zig Ziglar 10-minute phone call would be a 20, 30-second phone call for Richard Blank in Costa Rica. I can't memorize 5 chapters, but I can take things in smaller piles, kind of like Bruce Lee did when he walked into that Japanese dojo and beat up 40 people. It was incredible. And so when people cloud their minds with too much, it's impossible to be in the now. I need individuals to know their checkpoints, know their stages, and if they can land the beginning, it reduces any sort of friction and gives more wiggle room. Now, when I get transferred to you, I will then, instead of doing a company name spike, let you know, hi, this is Paul. Paul, got to let you know how great Catherine was. And then you say, who is this? Nice, I got you. You asked me about anchors. Did I lie, cheat, or steal? No, I complimented the individual who gave me the pass to pitch, because no one gets through to you. How did I get through to Catherine? Because I said the name of the company better than she did. She was slacking. And then I said my name in a nice way, used her name, my name again. And she thought I was charming enough to pass because I did let her know I was going to let you know how great she was. It's a positive escalation. Of course she's going to transfer me. Come on, it's easy. I can build a pipeline for your audience in a week, and then it's up to them to close it. But my goodness gracious, I can't hit the ball and drag Johnny, But I think if your individuals can work on these sort of 2-minute introductions for a gatekeeper, for a first-time individual, leaving voicemails, custom-made emails, don't be surprised if you feel better about your job. People will call you back more, take your business a little bit more serious than they would other people that are just looking for a quick angle.
Now, do you do research to select the calls that you're going to be making, or how does that work? Where you because a lot of times I get a call from a telemarketer, and they're trying to sell me this funding for companies that experience problems with the seasonality in the States because there was no snow. And I live in a snow region, and there's lots of ski resorts. And there's also calls that I get from people who've had employees who during the COVID time, there's some government assistance. And a lot of that's scam. A lot of it, I don't know if it is or not, but I'm not qualified. I'm not a good prospect for them. So they're wasting their time and their energy. So how do you get past that issue?
First is I'm not giving them any money today, so we all need to calm down and slow down. Secondly, this is my wheelhouse. How many times do you really get telemarketing calls? So I'll let Billy pitch me for 5 minutes. I'd love to hear him. And then I say, hey, Billy, you mind if I make a suggestion? Yeah. And then I rope it dope them real good. And at the end, they thank me. I will let them know times when they missed the beat. I will ask certain questions that they never followed up on. They'll glance over it, they'll hedge it and repeat it, but they won't ask her second or third question, which shows depth, interest, and anchoring, as we spoke earlier. I bet you at the end of the phone call, if I asked them to give me the meeting minutes, they couldn't even tell 5 of the answers that I gave or 5 of the extra things that I mentioned. They probably weren't even multitasking on the phone while I was engaging them to look up my website, my LinkedIn profile to see if there's anything else that might be able to assist in closing the deal. I never hear military alphabet when I give out my email address. And so to me, what it does is, and maybe it's different for you, but I'm sizing up my competition. Regardless of the outcome, I got to see how this individual is trained, what the QA department's doing for them if they even have one, who's in charge of their terrible script that's too pushy and the guy's not listening. And so it makes me feel better for the fact that at least I'm doing something that has more caliber. And if that's my competition, please, I'll crush them. But then at the end, I'll ask for credentials. I ask for an email or a callback phone number. If they're not willing to give those things, then it was very nice speaking with you. Sometimes I ask for references. If you're proud and you know what you're doing, you should have those things at the ready. And so I agree with you, my friend. Allow these people to pitch. If they're legitimate, they'll follow through. From an educated point of view, make a decision. But if they're shady-datey, then catch them. But at least have fun for a little bit. There's nothing like that romantic tragedy where you know that they know that you know that they're not going to get it, but you might as well let them pitch it. And then at the end, you teach them a lesson because they should be doing something better with those talents. And let them know I'm not angry at you, but I'm just disappointed in you. You have too much skills to be doing what you're doing. And maybe you're that one phone call that did something to them.
Yeah, well, that's one side of the coin. What about the clients that you're calling on, the customers or the prospects whom you are calling on? Is that something that you do research to develop lists of people that you're going to contact? How does that work?
No, it's both. A lot of the times the clients have an established clientele base or people have filled out information, where it's once again, where they want to receive a phone call. But the thing is, if you're making prospecting calls, they have to follow the DNC and they got to make sure that these leads are valid and they have enough information. So we're just not making a super cold call. Could you be successful in it? You could, but you will keep saying there's a different way to look at it. All right, my man, let's think about the soldier that needs to carry that. The agents that I hire have leverage. They can get hired at Amazon tomorrow. I want to bend them. I don't want to break them. So if the client is not giving us the resources, or we could be on a level playing field and they just completely added a lot of weight to the agent, don't be surprised if people either quit, the morale goes low, and then you have negative Nancy's everywhere. And I mean, you can't be giving me Glengarry leads and just things that are teed up. It happens. But give us a college try. I mean, give us a real list, because eventually you'll see that someone's been dead for 9 years. How am I going to get this as a lead? I've seen those before. But if the script is proper, if you, as I mentioned before, have your rebuttals in place, is this a scam? Why should I do business with information, or why should I do business with you? How'd you get my information? Can you send me information? You know, these are the basics that people may be asking, and just be prepared for it. If you are doing nothing wrong, you have nothing to hide. And as I mentioned before, if you're able to reduce people's defense in the beginning, they might not be asking those sort of qualifying questions, because as you mentioned before, you're not associating yourself with those sort of people. It's the guys that are doing the carpet bombing, calling you sir, running through the questions, flinching so you don't hang up, supervisor behind them with coffee breath about to scream at them. You can tell. And so you don't need to do this, Paul, but you may need to, as you were in those shoes one day. There were days that I knocked on doors prospecting, had to make phone calls, had to sell lemonade. There were the times you wanted that sale, or at least someone to balance your bike, and you didn't have to pay for these services. You're not investing. You're not a qualified person, but you're a damn good salesman. You're very brilliant and bright. And this is somebody that you could maybe learn from, or once again, assist along the way. Because what I used to do when I had to make these phone calls, I would have callback lists, and some of the leads were hot or medium, but there were a few, these guys that would just take my call. It's not like they had nothing else to do, but we built a relationship where they weren't ready yet, but they kind of knew that I needed to get warmed up on a rainy Wednesday. So I would call Don Jorge, find out how the boxing gym's doing. How you been lately? You ready to switch over yet? Okay, no worries. But yeah, how's the family? What's going on? And so, and they would start asking, hey, how's business, Richard? How's this and that? And so I needed that. I do need high fives in the hallway from time to time. And so even though I've never met these people before, if I am capable of, once again, ethically balancing their bike, making a suggestion, or complimenting them on transitional sentences or rhetoric, I know what it's like as a telemarketer, damn it, on your 144th phone call. Even if you don't get the sale, it's still wind in your sails. And so I do that. And I believe that it's come back to me in spades. And so that's how I handle those sort of situations.
Gotcha. You mentioned the do not call list. Now, some companies abide by that, some of them don't.
Mm-hmm.
And if it seemed like when we started having cell phones, that got thrown way out the window, because
Right.
I get calls multiple times a day from people that shouldn't be calling me. How do you get on it, and how do you manage that? How does someone who's busy an entrepreneur trying to grow their business, focus on things, how do they sort through that? Are there some ways that you can do that?
In 16 years, I had a situation happen one time like 9 years ago. It's because when the client sent me the list and we were calling it throughout the month, maybe somebody had put their name in at that time before I got it. And there are things you could write in and explain your situation. And it wasn't escalated. It was something that was addressed, and we worked around that one situation. But if there's a code red, or if people are yelling or screaming or threatening, I'm stopping that campaign immediately. And I would be making a phone call to the client. That is their, professional responsibility, especially in my contracts. And as I mentioned before, don't think that since I'm in Costa Rica, I'm willing to take a hit for this. No, I have a United States inscribed corporation that follows all US business and banking laws. And plus, your money's not that important for me. You can keep your 12 seats. I don't want that. I got to tell my mom what I'm doing for a living.
Yeah.
So
what I meant is not from a call center perspective, but from an entrepreneur's perspective, who wants to avoid getting these calls that are not legit?
I wouldn't know how to stop something like that. Maybe there's certain, I know that it says spam caller and it would give you certain levels. It's very difficult to see. A lot of people just don't pick up the phone for things they don't see, but they get around it. They'll go to certain countries or use certain things to block that phone number or their IP address. And I did mention my good friend, there are people that are willing to make those phone calls
Yeah.
and take those chances. And there's no way to stop it. How can you stop it? I mean, it's just the one thing where instead of fighting against it, not accept it, but kind of sway with it so it doesn't affect you. That's why I would take the call and I would just hammer into them so much that they would literally, and I do know this, at call centers, they will not call you back. They'll realize they don't want to pass around that number anymore. If you say F you, they'll pass that number around and you're like, yeah, there's the F you guy. But if you and I as salespeople are trying to explain to them that their pitch isn't really that good and their rhetoric is kind of poor, you're like, yo, man, take them off this list. We don't want this guy telling this stuff to everybody. And so my suggestion for you, as I say, do the mature thing and teach them a lesson.
Yeah, I have done that before.
They
But
won't call you anymore.
I've also done the FU and they kept calling. So I didn't know that. So,
Oh, they'll love to call you. You get put on a special list for that. I want you to.
So we're starting to get towards the end here, but before we go, you mentioned checkpoints and tie down questions. Can you explain what those are?
Yeah, of course. As I say, if you're taking some food, you take a bite, you can't eat a whole pizza. You take a sip of beer, take a breath. So why would you give information like shoving a pizza in your face? I know you've chugged before, but you still have to swallow. Okay, it just doesn't go in one shot.
Yeah.
And so I kind of gave the same concept for information, that it needs to be digested. They do claim that the average attention span's 30 seconds. So why don't we play 30 seconds?
I get you.
And what are my checkpoints? Are pretty much make sense, right, Paul? Sounds good.
So it's like a
Right,
bucket
Paul?
brigade. That conversation is a bucket brigade. So you kind of earn your way through the conversation in a way.
Well, how about this? People are always wondering why they didn't get the appointment or get the sale. Well, you left a door open. You didn't really answer that question the guy wanted. So that's why they want more information, or you push too hard. It's almost like that show Get Smart with Maxwell Smart. That's walking through that hallway and the door is closed behind them. I know about things that need to sustain. And I would rather have a beautiful 3 minutes than a shoddy 10. And I go slow and low and I slice and I dice and I get double thumbs up underwater scuba diving before I move on. And so I just want to ensure, as I rake the open-ended question with you, ensuring that you have exhausted every answer you've given to me and every zig and zag that we could do, that then I would say, Paul, are we ready to move forward? And you'd say, yes. Or Paul, any more questions? And you'd say, yes, Richard, I have one more question about the pinball machines.
I do have a question about the pinball machine.
Nice. I love it. And then guess what? One last time at the end of the call, I go, now we've done A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, I just raked it. Do you have any final questions? Yeah, one more about the pinball. I knew it. I knew he had one more. Please, I'm probably batting 50% on that bad boy. People were always thinking of that one last question. Why? Because that's the main anchor out of the 9 things on the menu that they love the most. Man, I thought it was seafood. This guy's talking steak. Hey, I would have never thought. And so the greatest thing to do is to present everything like it's in a dessert tray and give each individual thing its own boost. And then you sit back and you wait for the reaction. Because if you assume you're just making an ass out of you and me, you've heard of that before.
Oh, yeah.
I don't assume anything. I think everything's the best. And if they don't say anything, I'm going to go, listen, Paul, I'm sure you like at least one of them. I didn't say all 9. Come on, at least you like one.
Yeah.
I'm Hail Marrying this. And then you say, well, maybe I like the pinball. Okay, well, let's go there and make some camp for a little bit. And we take horizontal to vertical, and I'm not moving. I'm not moving. I'm not moving at all, because I've seen a lot of wasted space, wasted time in bad directions. And if starting the conversation with you is just one thing, to get that email back, that phone call back, leave the other things alone. We'll get to that later. And so I've really understood people's boundaries and their distances. And that's a very nice thing. You can always cold call close. But Paul, it took 2 emails and a video call prior to this podcast. This was not a cold call close. And so if people are willing to invest and respect your rules and be prompt and on time when expected, then don't be surprised if these relationships don't keep growing. And today was the prime example on 4th time is the charm with Paul. And I just want your audience to know that I was at the ready, on time, dressed, and exceptionally excited to hang out with my buddy.
And
you make every
exceptionally
phone
well
call.
dressed as well, too.
Yeah.
Good job.
But my thing is, my friend, at the end of the day, please just don't be hard on yourself. And everybody knows the right thing to do. And if you properly represent yourself in the best light, you will have haters. You'll be surprised that some people you thought might give you business don't. But then the long shot, the wild card, that individual will call you and then you'll say, Paul, why? Why did you choose me? And then they said, because of the way you spoke to my assistant, or the fact that you did some due diligence about me. And the fact that you didn't press like everybody else. I like that, Richard. You were confident enough to share with me everything you had and allow me to make a decision. You really did put your best foot forward. And then I get extra excited. I'm like, yeah, then I can really be myself. I really made myself vulnerable, which makes you powerful.
Yeah.
And if you do these things, you can live really an honorable life and be very strong. And you'll look at yourself in the mirror and be proud, Paul, because I think that's probably the most important thing that your entrepreneurs and audience needs to do in order to find that center and balance.
Well, right on, Richard. I think we've talked about a lot of things about how a call center might approach a conversation, but this is universal. What you've just laid out here is for everyone. For how to have a conversation that is meaningful and can connect with the person that you're calling. So a lot of us are faced with calls, and we're always communicating either face to face, like Richard and I are, or over the phone or in person. So thank you for that, Richard. As we wrap up with your final words, what are 3 things that our listeners and viewers can do today to put these ideas into action?
Oh, don't listen to the naysayers and the gray believers. They don't KNOW enough about what's going on with you. They're always saying no. What you need to do is still have your responsibilities, but then again, 40 hours a week is still part-time. You could put in another 40. You can build a business on the side. And I think you should reach out to mentors. I like the books and everything, but I prefer stuff that's more active and live, like a Toastmasters or participating, even volunteering. Why? Just to get your feet wet, get loose a little bit, get out there. That's a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
And then also someone like myself, I had to get past a lot of parents' guilt. I chose to be a Spanish major. I didn't follow in certain footsteps of my grandfather who went to Harvard Law. My dad went to Columbia. My brother went to Washington and Lee University. That's incredible. Yeah. I didn't have the grades or the maturity for those sort of studies, and I couldn't study finance. Languages is what gave me Paul, I knew that it was going to work. Why? Because of the dedicated practice. If you go above and beyond, A, you love it, and B, you're really getting ready for it. It's like a boxer training. And the fact that I did more than just what my school expected of me, I knew I was going to win, watching movies, reading books, writing, going on dates, speaking Spanish. And so it became fun. And I knew I could feel these butterflies that my destiny was taking me somewhere. And so when I had this opportunity to move abroad and to study Spanish, my parents gave me the argument. This is the last thing for your audience. They said, Richard, why aren't you doing these footsteps? And I go, well, my great-grandparents came to the United States at the turn of the 20th century. They learned English. They were in New York in the garment industry. Look at the chances they took. It just skipped 2 generations. I'm a nomad. I'm learning a language. I want to move abroad. It's in our blood. And the worst thing you could ever do to anybody is to put out that spark that somebody has. Worst thing you could do. And it's incredible because I know that people love me. They were just nervous because they didn't understand it. All they want to do is put you in a bubble, warm blankets and hot food and keep you safe. But it's the parent that puts you on the front row of that roller coaster and allows you to do 3 flips. They prepared you for life. They've made you the sort of individual that realizes that there's a risk and a reward, and that from time to time, you can really click your heels and smile in life. And I've had so many people try to hold me back from certain things that I was passionate about. And I had to make those decisions to do this alone. You will not always have a band of brothers with you. In fact, the majority of the work that you do will be by itself. The risks you'll be taking is your own. But that's a hero's journey. Those are what the fables and the best stories around the campfire have been told of the individual that was so bold and brave that they decided to really drink life to the fullest. And then you hear of these stories of success. But it's really not about the money of success. Most people just want to leave their castle to slay a dragon. And hopefully my individual story that is unique, I went my own way, it's one of so many. And if I can show your audience that if you just persevere and you really keep picking yourself up, use every cliche that you need to motivate yourself to keep doing this. So you get the structure, you get the discipline, because that's what lasts. And if you can combine all of these things, you can be on Paul's podcast and telling your tales. And that's how we're going to end today.
All right, brother. Well, thank you so much. And you can reach out to Richard. You can go to join his group about everything about call centers. You can connect with him and with his group at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com/call center.
Oh, yeah.
And remember, faith and action go hand in hand. So keep the pedal to the metal. Until next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show, I'm Paul Guyon, your host, and Richard Blank. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyon, where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.